Tales of the Caballos by William H. White. Part 1 is about the early history. Part 1, Chapter 4, Pedro Navarrez. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe and set up proper notifications. Pedro Navarrez was an outlaw who flourished in the vicinity of the Caballo Mountains in the mid-1600s. He was half Apache and half Spanish, and was at home at either culture. He could use a block and tackle or a bow and arrow with equal effectiveness. Pedro decided upon a life of crime at an early age when he single-handedly stole 6 horses from a rival Indian tribe. Pedro was only 12 years old at this time. He brought the horses into the Apache camp where he was heralded as a hero by his Indian family. Stealing from others outside the tribe was not considered a crime by the Apaches, but rather an honorable endeavor. Pedro soon focused upon the most hated group of the Apache enemies, the Spaniards. The Spaniards coming and going along the Camino Real and the Jornada del Muerto provided easy prey for this ambitious young man. Pedro soon gathered a group of Indians around him to assist in his raids. The number of his band grew to an incredible 600 braves at the time of his defeat and capture. Although he was quite young and ambitious, his reign of terror existed for only 12 years. During this time, Pedro accumulated a vast amount of loot taken from his Spanish adversaries. Unlike the Spanish, Pedro preferred silver to gold. Silver could be traded for gunpowder or knives at the Spanish trading post without raising eyebrows. Gold, on the other hand, could not be treated openly without arousing suspicion. Pedro Navarrez had been raiding and pillaging virtually unchecked until one of his acts infuriated the Spanish. Pedro and his band attacked and sacked one of the Jesuit missions on the western slope of the Caballo Mountains, killing the inhabitants and taking the church treasure. The response by the Spanish was quick and overwhelming to this outlaw band. A well-disciplined dispatch of Spanish soldiers appeared almost immediately with full body armor and field cannon. Pedro and his band were totally unprepared for this and attempted to flee. Pedro quickly headed for a pass at the south end of the Caballo Mountains that was eventually to be called Apache Gap in later years. His plan was to disperse into the Jornada del Muerto. The Spanish were waiting for him, and he never made it. It was here that Pedro Navarrez was captured with all of his men after a brisk 2-day battle. The Spanish quickly put the surviving members of his gang to death, while Pedro Navarrez was taken to Mexico City to stand trial. Pedro Navarrez was sentenced to death, but he was converted to Christianity before his execution. In his quest for divine forgiveness, he described the location of his main treasure stash. And it is this description that has tantalized the treasure hunters to this day. Where the 3 springs meet, look for the rock that is not of the area. Look for the gray flat stone with the crude cross or X on it. Under this stone you'll find, etc., etc. This is not the exact translation, but you get the drift. I believe that this area described in what is now known as the Palomas Gap, there's a place there that meets all the criteria described above. I also believe that there are between 10 and 12,000 90-pound silver bars located there. My low-range metal detector also agrees. In the 1930s, a toll road was built through the Palomas Gap to connect the community of Palomas and the railroad to the east. It was a one-way road with many parts hanging precariously close to the vertical limestone cliffs it passes through. Up to the time this road was built, the only passage available was by using the ancient Spanish road that avoided the gap altogether and meandered over the top of the switchback down to the lower elevations. Today, the Palomas Gap is one of the more remote destinations of the Caballo Mountains, but well worth the effort if you have a good four-wheel drive vehicle and the skill to use it. A treasure in silver could await the lucky one who eventually stumbles onto Pedro Navarrez' treasure site.